I'd like to call this City Council work session. Today is October 15th at 5 p.m. And before I do roll call, I have a statement to make. The City of Goodyear lost a great public servant, and I lost a beloved friend. Over the weekend, when Goodyear City Councilman member Gary Gelser succumbed to his brief battle with cancer. His illness came without a notice, and it has robbed all of us of the talents, energy, and passion of a man. This man loved his community, he loved his family, and he truly cared about people. Sorry, guys. A friend of mine for many years. You know, Gary was a strategic thinker. He was spirited, a lively advocate, and wow, was he knowledgeable. He loved transportation issues, especially trains. In many ways, he was my rock. In every way, he was dear to me. The council meets tonight with a heavy heart, but will continue its work this evening, honoring his commitment to public service that remains an example to all of us. So with that, I see everybody around the table but Gary this evening, so he's in God's hands. So let's start out with the agenda items for discussion, and we're going to do both of them in sequence, okay? So we have the same presenter. So if I may, we will receive a condensed update on the city's designation of assured water supplies and demands, and a proposal to consider ordering Central Arizona project, which is a CAP water for 2013. And Mark, you're going to give this presentation and the following one, which provides the mayor and council with an overview and discussion of a proposed one-time purchase agreement with the city of El Mirage for a small portion of Goodyear's set-aside long-term storage credits. There is no net loss of long-term storage credits for the city, and the proposed agreement would save the city $27,372.15. So with that, Mark, you are our new water resource manager. We look forward to this presentation. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. It's a pleasure to be here. Very exciting. I want to give a brief overview of the city's designation of assured water supply, just to kind of bring up speed on that. So the topics, again, the overview of our water resources in the update. I will discuss the 2013 Central Arizona Project Water Order, which is Worksession 1, and the one-time purchase agreement with El Mirage for long-term storage credits. So let's jump into the Goodyear's water resource update. So in 2010, the city was reissued its designation of assured water supply. The designation of assured water supply is a consumer protection program whereby a water provider demonstrates a 100-year supply of water, how groundwater will be preserved, and how long-term water planning will be promoted. The Arizona Department of Water Resources Assured Water Supply Program operates to sustain the state's economic health by preserving groundwater resources and promoting long-term water supply planning. We'll kind of touch on the water supply planning in just a little bit. Also, the Arizona Department of Real Estate requires a demonstration of assured water supply, which allows development to issue a public report and sell lots. Because the city was issued a designation of assured water supply, development is required to only obtain a written commitment of service from the city to demonstrate their assured water supply. So, in essence, the city controls its own destiny. So you're probably asking, what is the criteria of an assured water supply? There's probably more information you want to know from the Department of Water Resources. But here's the pyramid of the criteria used by the department to evaluate each entity's water provider's water supply and their assured water supply. So I'll start at the bottom, and this is really the fundamental, the foundation of the assured water supply. It looks at the physical water availability, it looks at the legal water availability, and the continuous water availability. And moving up, they also consider the financial capabilities of the water provider, water quality aspects, and management plans and goals. And I'll kind of go into detail on these. So management plans, starting back at the top now, are what we've all been accustomed to and we've heard about in Arizona, water conservation requirements. So all water providers are required to have certain water conservation requirements. Management goals. Water providers must demonstrate that renewable water supplies are or will be available, and that we must achieve safe yield by 2025. And what that means basically is that for every gallon of groundwater that we pump and use, we must replenish that gallon of water. Financial capabilities. Water providers must demonstrate financial capability to construct water treatment facilities, storage and delivery mechanisms within their water providing systems. Water quality. The sources of water obviously vary from whether you're in groundwater, CAP, Central Arizona Project, various other water supplies. So we must demonstrate that we're able to treat that water to the suitable use treatment parameters. And this is the foundation, again, the foundation that makes up what the department really looks at most critically, the physical water availability. So if we're dealing with groundwater, a hydrologic study is to evaluate the groundwater demands for all water area users. So what that means is that when they looked at the city's groundwater supply over 100 years, they evaluated in conjunction with that all the local water providing companies and other cities who are pumping groundwater all together cumulatively. If it's surface water supplies, they'll be looking at the delivery and treatment capabilities. And of course, the legal availability, that's the evaluation of all of our legal water entitlements. So whether we have Central Arizona Project water, groundwater, long-term storage credits, or effluent, which we'll touch on in just a minute, that's what they evaluated. And then continuous water availability. Water providers must demonstrate that the water supplies are uninterruptible for 100 years.
I have a question there. So
Yes.
that's always the question, the uninterrupted. What, I mean, how does one determine that?
Well, I think from a standpoint, we try and plan for all conditions. So let's say, for example, we're dealing with drought right now. Let's say that, for example, the Central Arizona Project had declared a drought, which reduced specific water users on the CAP system. Well, hopefully we have done our due diligence and we have a long-term storage credit bank account that we could say, hey, our CAP water is uninterrupted because we can pull from that bank account and put it in our delivery system. So a lot of water providers, the state of Arizona is actually, through the Arizona Water Banking System, has bought, since 1994, over 3 million acre feet of CAP water, excess CAP water, stored that in Tonopah and other recharge facilities. So if the state were to encounter a shortage, there's a system of which could actually provide uninterruptible service for CAP. So similarly, we try and do due diligence to have a robust system that we can claim it's uninterruptible.
Thank you.
You bet. So let's go ahead and jump into and examine the city's designation based on the 2010 Department of Water Resources evaluation. So this is pretty much after the department looked at all of our total water supplies. They came back and made their evaluation based on the criteria that I pointed out to you, the little pyramid, and said, City of Goodyear, we see a total of 14,642.56 acre feet per year that you can use. And you see that the little three-dimensional pie here really has 4 primary buckets of water. And it's pretty much the easiest way to remember it is these are all kind of individually separated, different flavors of water or different buckets of water. But I'll try and go through each one in more detail and explain the differences and the nexus between certain ones.
Quick question.
Yes.
We can use 14.6, right?
That's what the department has determined as an assured water supply for 100 years.
What are we using now?
Right now, excuse me, we're approaching, our current production is about closing in on 9,000 acre feet.
Okay, the difference between 9 and 14, 5,000, how many homes does that produce, roughly?
Oh, how many homes? Great question. I'll have to get back on you on that one because it depends on the conservation measure and so forth, but that's a lot of homes.
Just trying to get an idea to see where we are from a bank standpoint to, what kind of cushion we have.
I think the average home per year would use about 0.1 acre feet or so. I think is a pretty good rule of thumb. 0.1, 0.2 acre feet. So it's definitely a lot of homes.
Okay.
But I got some good news. The next slide is going to actually show some better news. That it's going to be our total water supplies are a much different number.
Okay.
Let's start at the top. The direct delivered effluent. So right now we're producing. We're in the wastewater business. We have 3 reclamation facilities, and the Rainbow Valley Reclamation Facility is primarily producing this effluent that's being recognized by the Department of Water Resources, and that's being directly delivered to the developments reusing that water supply. It's about 10% of our overall water budget, and it's considered renewable. So every year we're going to be treating wastewater. We're going to be delivering that water to that development. The next, moving to the left and down, is the Central Arizona Project, municipal and industrial, and our Gila River Indian Community lease water. After the department evaluated our entire supply of that water supply, which is about 51%, it's renewable, they said you have access to 7,516 acre feet per year. And how we take this water right now is we order water through the Central Arizona Project. We would then order that water to be recharged in one of the Central Arizona Project's recharge facilities, because right now we just can't take it directly. We don't have a pipe up to the facility or a treatment system to treat that water, or a recharge facility that we can claim as our own. I'll kind of show you why the importance of that is in the next slide. Moving to the right, the long-term, the green pie, piece of the pie is our long-term storage credit bank account. This is the bank. So when we put water, we order water and we recharge that water, it goes underground, it then moves into the green pie and becomes our bank account. The bank account is basically what we use on an annual basis to account for the replenishment of the groundwater molecules we're pumping through our wells. So right now we're pumping groundwater, but we're going to claim it as either CAP water or other water supplies. And we'll kind of talk about the next one here, which is groundwater. And by the way, long-term storage credits are renewable because we can order water, and it is either through effluent. And by the way, if we took the direct delivered effluent or other water from produced in a reclamation facility and recharge that underground, that would also go to that bank. So the bank is our main legal withdrawal authority that we would use on an annual basis to account for our groundwater pumping. And lastly, groundwater. The department evaluated hydrologically what sits under the city. Of course, just to recall, we are a member service area of the Central Arizona Groundwater Replenishment District. Regardless, they evaluated us at 5,025 acre feet per year, 34%, and it's not renewable. This is water that was being deposited here thousands of years, tens of thousands of years ago, and we're using more of it than it's being replenished on an annual basis. But whatever water we do use, just as a little comparison, because we're part of the Central Arizona Groundwater Replenishment District, this water is 3 times the cost of CAP water. Just to let you know, and today is the cheapest you're ever going to buy any of these water supplies. It only goes up from here. So the costs go up every year for both CAP, but it's 1/3 the CAP than the cost of using groundwater.
Mark, I do have this just from one of the other ones. It says that an acre foot supports 5 people per year, not including agriculture, mining, and other industries. So that's notes from the last presentation.
Perfect.
So does that sound kind of?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
2 households, sure.
A couple of questions.
Yes.
I just want to, when I had read over this before our meeting, I had kind of jotted down to myself some notes just to clarify what each one of these pieces of the pie are. And so I just want to make sure, I mean, groundwater, that is what we currently have, just like you said, correct?
Correct.
The CAP water would be water that would be brought in, but we currently don't have connection to that water. Correct?
We don't have a pipe, if you will, to get it from the canal down to the city boundaries.
Okay. But we're leasing it or we're purchasing rights to it? Is that?
We have a subcontract with the federal government for 10,700 and plus acre feet. That's a subcontract. That is an annual amount of water we can order. The lease is also a 100-year contract with the community, of which we could order 7,000 acre feet. So in actuality, nearly 18,000 acre feet is a total we could order every year if we so desired.
But if this occurred tomorrow, we have no way of getting the water unless it's trucked in.
Well, we can recharge it in the recharge facilities, the Agua Fria recharge facility just to the north and the hieroglyphic, or we could partner with, we have agreements with the Tonopah Irrigation District and also Maricopa Water District.
Okay.
We can partner and order that water. They would use that water supply instead of pumping groundwater. We would then get credit for that groundwater not pumped, minus 5%. A cut goes to the aquifer. So that is these are methods, but I think to your bigger question, the hydrologic connection may not be there. So you're absolutely right. Pipe is the connection to get water here, but the way the department evaluates this, whatever we bank, we can use in our long-term storage credit bank account because we're still within the active management area.
Okay. Okay.
For example, I will say that Chandler banks water at Tonopah, but they'll recover it over in Chandler. And obviously, the water has not traveled from Tonopah all over to Chandler.
Right.
So, but
Okay.
you're absolutely correct.
Okay, then, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
And the fluent, that's what we currently make ourselves,
Correct.
more or less. And then now, is the long-term storage credits, is that what we call our paper water?
Yes.
Okay.
That's correct.
And then, and this is something that I've actually brought up a couple times, and maybe I'm way off base, but if we had a goal or a policy for the city, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, I really don't know what that number would be. But if we were to say that we had a goal of 25, currently it says affluent, it was at 10% renewable. If we were to say, as the City of Goodyear's goal, we wanted it to be at 25%, because currently we have a lot of places that I understand within our city that cannot take affluent, where they could actually use it, but we just don't have the infrastructure to put it there. So I'm thinking long term from now, if we're talking 10, 20 years, is 25% too much? Is that out of the question? I mean, I'm just thinking long term, if we were to increase that goal from 10% to, I don't know, 25%. First of all, I have no idea what that would cost. If you were to say, okay, do 10 miles a year as a goal to try to make it. But that would be something I'd be interested in hearing about.
And I'll answer it two ways. I think I'm going to have one of your answers in the next slide,
Okay.
Which is the good news slide. The other is whatever we deliver from potable water and that we're collecting through a collection system, on average, we're going to get between 40 to 45% back if we're collecting all that wastewater, treat it, that's the volume, about 45%. On a good, maybe 50 if you're really good at it, but maybe 40 to 50% is what the maximum amount of water you're going to get back from what we deliver and collect back from an effluent standpoint. Does that make sense?
Okay.
That'd be the top. If we were delivering, say that the total volume, there is a lot of consumption, and just remember that the 60% of the water we're delivering is going to exterior water uses,
Right,
which we're losing.
exactly.
So this is strictly what we're collecting is interior use, and obviously that number keeps going more efficient as we go further in the future with plumbing codes improving efficiency and so forth.
And that's, over the years, it's the HOAs that I hear from, it's the golf courses that are saying, hey, well, I would love to be using affluent here, and it's the landscaping and things like that. And so, but
Sure.
the infrastructure is not there. So that was
I have a question on that, but not every municipality has CAP water. Is that
Correct. That is correct.
Okay,
and
so that's another-
and it's a good point. Those municipalities or water providers, if they were just a private public water service area, not a city but a private or public, if they didn't have any CAP water, the only water supply they could really get was Central Arizona Groundwater Replenishment District. So it really was a way for them to have the replenishment opportunity, and that's why right now the cost, that district is struggling with trying to figure out how to buy water supplies today without the cost. And I think some of the studies indicate they're going to be very, very costly, and they can't pay for them right now. So the rates are only going to go up, and I've heard speculation, that right now it's 3 times. I've heard maybe next year it's going to be 4 times. The year after it could be 5 times the price of CAP water. So their goal, from a liability from that district having to replenish this volume of water, is to try and move away from that and obviously get folks on using all their CAP water.
So sort of the message here is that people in our communities in the Southwest have to realize, and especially those moving from other parts of the state, how precious water is and how water is like gold. It will become expensive as the time goes on. There is no way to prevent that. It is a resource that's limited. And so I just want to bring this up to the public because sometimes you get criticized, for a raise in utility bills and in water and you name it. And I don't think that they understand how precious this resource is and how it isn't that plentiful as respect to, say, maybe some other utility source. Is that correct?
That's correct. As I mentioned, water will only be as cheap as it is right now today. It's only going to go up. I think on average, the CAP water is composed of energy to move water, the 330 plus miles. It has to be lifted 3,000 feet in elevation. It's, I think, #1 energy consumer in the state. There's obviously a number of costs associated with that operationally, the canal was a $4.5 billion debt. We owe about half of it remaining debt service. So All those things add up to billions of dollars, and water is not going to. They say it's only going to go up. And I think it's on average gone up 7 to 9% per year, and I think they're projecting a lot more of that in the distant future. But it's going to go up.
So our sun is free, but our water's not.
That's correct.
I have a question on that. I know we talked earlier, and so I don't have too many questions, but with the long-term storage credits, is there a maximum how much we can put in that bank?
No, whatever water supplies you have and the recharge facilities that you choose to use, whether it's recharge or partnering with an irrigation district for a groundwater savings facility permit, whatever your access to, you can get credit for if you successfully have a permit and you recharge it.
So we can continue just to build that bank over the years.
Good. That's correct. So here's the good news slide. This is the good news slide, and this kind of shows some opportunity, I think, to the discussion earlier about long-term planning. Back to the question raised about reclaimed water. Here you see that if you look at our total water supplies on the very bottom, you see our total equal 28,367.58 acre feet that we have available per year. Why some of these things weren't included, we've already touched on them, but I'll kind of recap. Once again, there's a delivered direct effluent that's from the Rainbow Valley primarily. Obviously, back to the reclaimed water, the higher the quality of effluent that we bring, A+ is the best, that provides better opportunity for long-range planning because there's more uses under state law that allow you to use Class A for various things. Turf, irrigation. If you're doing Class B or less, you're restricted on the reuse. So if our goal is to reuse water, obviously, I think it makes sense to go with Class A+ because it provides most opportunity. The purple piece of pie there, you'll see that what was not included by the department's evaluation was our wastewater being treated and to a Class A+ at the 157th Avenue wastewater plant. That's 3,500 acre feet. And the reason why it was not is because we're not really beneficially reusing it right now. And when that purple, we directly deliver that reclaimed water for direct reuse, say at another development, then that direct delivery effluent piece of pie will grow. If we recharge that effluent underground, then you'll see that our long-term storage credit bank account will grow. So that's one of our diligent moves here is to try and look at how we can, as soon as possible, reutilize this water for either reuse or recharging because that's our water portfolio. And if we can make beneficial use of that through either of those mechanisms, that will enhance our portfolio and be recognized by the Department of Water Resources. We've already touched on it, but you see how large our Central Arizona project.
It's the psychological part of all of it.
Well,
It'll be interesting when the public is ready to accept that,
Sure.
because that's exactly what it is, and that doesn't include the technology that you can that eventually, and I know there are homes that you recycle that within your home.
Right.
And that technology, and out of that question is, do we look into that as the time goes on and they develop these technologies? Are we looking into this, or do we kind of have an idea, or what the cost for a city? I don't know what the process of it is. So, advanced technology, where are we?
I think right now it's taken the state 20 years for us to be comfortable with taking reclaimed water, treating it to a Class A+, which is virtually potable water, and sticking that underground and then recovering it many miles away. I think we're comfortable with that.
Okay.
But I will say that when you hear the toilet to tap, we're definitely not comfortable with that. But I will say that we like, change is good, you go first kind of thing. We're watching California right now because I think they are looking at this type of technology. And I think from the state standpoint, we're going to watch California and see how that all shakes out.
Aren't we funny? We all giggle about that, don't we? It's like in grade school, but it's probably going to be a fact of life as time goes on. Yeah.
Well,
Yes,
I have
Jerry?
a question. I'm sure scientifically, yeah, but that's exactly what I was thinking when you say if effluent and then you're putting it back down into the water. When you pump it back up, the water, the molecules are going to mix together. So when you're pumping back up, once it's down in that aquifer, at some point it gets pumped back up.
It's purified.
It's potable again, right?
Yes, it's all purified. In 1994, the state came up with a great statute. It said that, why are we building these huge water treatment facilities if they're not needed? Some are needed. And why are we building huge amounts of secondary infrastructure? So they said, let's allow for the aquifer to be both the pipe and the water treatment system. So they allowed for these underground storage facilities. So you take either reclaimed water or surface water, stick it over in the ground here, and be able to pull out in wells at various locations in the aquifer. So the aquifer becomes treatment facility and the pipe. It's pretty amazing. And it actually, for some, obviously we have water quality issues here in the city and our aquifer, so it's more challenging for us compared to other aquifers that are much cleaner, that can do more robust things with. Back to the good news slide here. When we're able to stick the effluent underground, recharge it, that's when our long-term storage credit account will actually start to grow. And you saw that our quantity of Central Arizona project is more substantial than what the department gave us credit for. If I go back, you see they gave us credit for 7,500 plus acre feet. Our total balance is nearly 18,000. And it goes right back to the point, we can't directly take that CAP water to our community, so we don't control the 100-year destiny of that water. And obviously we're partnering with the CAP to recharge that water at a facility they own. So there may be years we don't have capacity. So on an average annual yearly basis for 100 years, the department says you're going to get about half or less than half. So our goal is to change that as diligently as possible to try and have all of this be recognized, because at the end of the day we'll have 28,000 acre feet, doubling our assured water supply.
Quick, okay, just clarification again. So between the two, the green CIP lease and the orange CIP M&I subcontract, is that a purchased water, the orange, compared to the lease? And the lease is saying that on an annual basis, we have X amount to have to account for 100 years, and if we haven't hit that, we lease it, and that's where we get that part of the pie, correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay.
Yes, it basically, the subcontract is something we'll always have in perpetuity. Our lease with the Indian community is 100 years, and obviously our goal...
That's the Indian community?
Yes, the green
Okay.
is the Indian community, Gila River Indian community lease. It's a 100-year lease, that's why it is, but once again, we can't directly take the water. We still have access to it, but we can't directly take it.
Didn't we pay, was that $1 million a year, or two, I forget what that was.
I
It
don't
was
know
up
the
there.
exact total on
It
that.
was
I
shaking his head.
think there was several
Yes.
millions of worth.
Well, I know, it was a few years worth, but I was thinking it was either $1 million a year or two.
I know there was a sale of some of the long-term storage credits to help pay for some of that debt, I think in 2009 or so, if I recall correctly. I apologize, I've only been here a few weeks, so I'm
That's
definitely
okay.
going to try and answer your questions. I'll get back to you.
Thank you.
The total price on that. So at the end of the day, we see that we have the ability to get 28,000, more than double, and that's going to be our due diligence here, is to try and figure out how we can, cost effectively enlarge our portfolio and have it be recognized. So I just want to talk, we already kind of touched on it, I wanted to illustrate just one option. It's just something to consider, and it's just, there are virtually limitless possibilities, but it kind of goes back to how much can our long-term storage credit account balance grow. So there's a lot of information in this slide, so I'm going to take the time to explain it. But this is basically an illustration of purchasing Central Arizona project water to meet our projected water demands while growing the long-term storage credit account. So on the left-hand side, in the vertical axis, you see the green numbers. That's acre feet from 0 to 120,000 acre feet. On the bottom horizontal axis, those are years, so I'm looking at the current end of this year, 2012, out to 2025. And the right-hand side, so the green numbers correlate with the green shaded area, and that is, the green shaded area is our bank account. It'd be total number of dollars. This is total number of acre feet sitting in our long-term storage credit account. So I'm estimating right now that at the end of 2012, after we're done with all the annual production of water, we're going to be sitting just over 80,000 acre feet of total long-term storage credits available to us. The red line correlates with the other vertical axis to the right, the red numbers. That's our current water production starting here in 2012, just under 9,000 or around 9,000 acre feet. And I'm using the 2002, the 2011 projections. So that's just stretching that out, looking at 2025, somewhere around nearing 16,000 acre feet. And obviously, if we take off in another boom economy, that could go up, or if things settle down, it could go more horizontal. So, but I want to show you the overlay on that, and what this kind of looks at is, if we were to start with, and you'll kind of, when the proposal here is 1,825 acre feet purchasing starting in 2012, and we double that every year, so next year in 2014 we'd order double that, 3,650, and then the year after we double that, it'd be 7,000-ish. 14,000 the next year until we hit our maximum of 18,000. You see that even when we're doubling, our long-term storage credit account is still depleting until we get to about 2015. when we start to go positive. And what this is doing is that water we're purchasing is taking in all of the annual water production. And then when we hit about 2016, we're actually taking in all the annual water production and using that water for that, and then we're still banking some credits. So the volume has actually exceeded what we're using annually in our production. So this kind of shows just one option, one possibility, one hypothetical, and it could be that we decide, one other could be we decide to order what our current production is, our estimated production. So there are a number of
I
possibilities.
have a question. What is the 2025 population? Where are we on? What is build out? 550. When is that?
Yeah,
Is this I didn't ask ahead of time on this, so I'm expecting.
yes, I want to say we're about 175,000 by 2025, if I remember right.
Okay.
So, and our population could grow as far as 600,000 at build out.
Yeah.
Estimated between 550,000
I
and
remember
600,000.
550, but I didn't.
Right.
So, okay. Thank you.
Let's kind of recap here. That the city's total water supply is actually quite robust. You see it's more than double what the department acknowledged for us, and we're going to work hard to have that enlarged for the department to actually acknowledge. The water resources portfolio is composed primarily of renewable water supplies. The only one that's not renewable is groundwater. So I wanted to recap on that. The annual CAP orders will allow the city to maintain or grow its long-term storage credit balance and not use groundwater, which is very expensive to replenish. And it's going to become increasingly expensive in the future. And when the city is able to take direct delivery of the CAP water, and what that looks like, the amount of CAP water recognized within the city's designation of assured water supply by the Arizona Department of Water Resources will significantly increase. And just as one more anecdote to recap, right now the Department of Water Resources is now looking at a reallocation process of which the final 96,000 acre feet of the non-Indian ag water is being reallocated, and they're going to look at set up the criteria. So obviously we're going to be very interested in obtaining potentially more of the CAP water. This is the cheapest water supply right now. So that's the process right now starting, and we're in negotiations with the department on those aspects. So let's start with the CAP water order. This would be part of the work session 1. That would be to consider purchasing CAP water for 2013. It's fairly straightforward. The Central Arizona Project has granted the City of Goodyear a 30-day extension from the October 1st water order deadline to cancel any or all part of its 2013 water order without the penalty. And then once again, that would end on October 31st. My late arrival here, I called the CAP, and they were very gracious and gave an extension. So I placed the order on October 1st, and we'll kind of go into that. But they gave us a 30-day extension to cancel any or all of it. So there's no obligation here. And the penalty would be if normally when you order CAP water and don't take it, you're going to pay the OM&R charges, the operation, maintenance, and replacement costs, which is usually about half right now of what the total CAP costs of an acre foot would be. So I ordered 3,650 acre feet on October 1st. And again, we can cancel any or all of that before October 31st, on or before October 31st, without any penalties.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
How much do we order each year?
This will be the first time I think that we'll be considering a CAP water order since 2007.
Okay, thank you.
And I will go back that back in the late 90s and up to 2007, the Central Arizona Project had incentive water, which they were trying to have folks take the CAP and use a full entitlement, so it was very inexpensive. So everybody was kind of on board with that because it was buy it, stick it in the ground, and build your long-term storage credit bank account. So now it's a little bit more, and there's not really the incentive water anymore, so it's been a while.
Joe, do you have a question?
Yes, sir.
Funding for the 250,000 that I see up here.
Oh, great question.
Where's that coming from, and do we have it budgeted?
The budget has been amended, and we do have a line item for that exact amount right now.
How are we funding that? With resource fees, water resource fees?
Yeah, we're funding it with the impact fees, right?
Yes.
It'd be impact fees that we're doing. And it's our first, as Mark said, it's our first crack at this in several years. I think we were trying to hold the line on some cost, but as I said a couple of months ago, one of the focuses we need to really look hard at is getting this water resources person here. It was great that he, I think it was his first week, he had a chance to order this by October 1st. He dug in, he had some networking. This is very unusual for the CAP to give us a 31-day time
Extension.
period to make
Yeah,
these
that's
decisions.
great.
And also at the same time, just ironically, Mirage contacted us and wanted to know if we would partner with them so they could get some long-term storage credits. So, in working with finance and Larry to find the dollars to be able to begin purchasing again, I think it's pretty exciting.
Bill? Oh, I'm sorry. Were you done, Joe?
No, just for clarification, we've got the money in the budget. It's not money that could be that was committed somewhere else. That now we got to find money for that somewhere else. But we're good. It's impact fees. It's water resource money.
Yes.
And even with the slowdown in the economy, we've got that pot of money sitting there to do this.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, Bill.
And that was kind of my piggyback question with that is, what is this going to do to the account, if you will, for impact fees for water resource? Are we depleting it, or will there still be monies left? I'm looking at Larry. I'm just kind of looking at all of you guys.
Come on, Larry.
Larry, would you come forward, please?
I mean, it's great that we've got it, but I don't want to drain the, sorry for the water pun, but I don't want to drain the account.
Well, actually, we've been draining the account, paying for the GRIC lease that we acquired. We refinanced.
Do we want to use the word draining? I'd like that corrected for the public and for our table, because this isn't draining. This is something that's going to be continuous. Is that correct? I mean, this is how you produce water for your city, and it's going to cost you money, so you're going to have money in, money out. So take it from there. I just wanted to eliminate the word draining. It just isn't quite what I'd like to hear.
The primary funding today on the out of that water resource fee is to pay for the Indian lease. There was some cash left over to allow us to do this, and keep in mind also at this point in time, we are starting a development impact fee study that this will be factored in with a bigger master plan. As the building permits pick up, that's part of why the cash is there today, is the building permits have picked up over our expectations. So you have the cash to do this. You have cash coming in to continue making the payments. We're good through this fiscal year, and then next year with the continued building permits, we are. But we do not have a surplus in that cash.
Okay, I think I'm good for right now.
Okay.
So we're proposing that the city consider purchasing 1,825.19 acre feet of that total 3,650 acre feet at a total cost of $250,051.03. Do you have a question?
Oh, I was just, so originally when you placed the order, it was for the 3,600 acre feet, but we really only need 1,800 acre feet, correct? And so then El Mirage, as a regional type of aspect here, thought, okay, they could purchase the remaining for whatever amount of dollars. Does El Mirage not have the ability to do it on their own? I mean, or is this, I just don't understand the, I don't understand.
Stealing my thunder. No, you're right on. Here's the real anecdote here is they're primarily CAGRD, ground replenishment.
Yes.
Their purchase of the other half is actually came in at the last minute. It was just kind of the timing was everything. I think part of our goal is to come up with a consistent and fair policy. Since we're not ordering all of our CAP water, how can we partner with other communities or water providers? We can be a good steward of that cooperation and collaborative effort in the West Valley. So we're trying to work on that as well. But this came in right at the last. This is going to save their community $800,000. That once again goes back to the 3 times the cost of CAP, so it's once again cheaper to buy CAP water. And so, yeah, half of this will be purchased by
I mean, so
Mirage.
technically we could say, well, we don't need the 3,600. We really only need 1,800. But regionally, it just makes more sense to do this as a partnership.
And looking back, it was a financial driven decision. So I'm working back from the $250,000, which I was in the budget looking at, and so working back toward how many acre feet does that buy?
Gotcha.
Trying to stick with the budget.
I see. Okay. Thank you.
And I would also point out that El Mirage is interested in additional amounts. So they have talked to us about increasing this amount, but for this year, we really held it to this amount. But longer term, they would be coming back to us and asking us to reconsider this number and go higher.
And that jumps us into the sale to El Mirage. So a total of 1824.81 acre feet of the 3650 of the CAP water order will be paid by El Mirage. It'll be funded through the sale of an equal amount of the city's existing long-term storage credits. So they're actually going to buy the paper water, and we're going to transfer that at the end of their last payment to the city of El Mirage. Their total cost is $277,371.12. So El Mirage has agreed to pay that total in monthly levelized payments, all within fiscal year 12-13, starting 1 month in advance of the first CAP invoice. The 1824.81 acre feet of long-term storage credits sold El Mirage will be replaced with the 2013 CAP water order. So really, our long-term storage credit account balance will have a net zero. There'll be no loss for that amount. And in fact, if we choose to go and purchase the CAP water for 2013 for our half, we'd actually have a net plus.
And El Mirage is obviously developing, or there's some development that they want to pursue, or business, or something that they can foresee that they're going to need this water.
I was not told the details other than that primarily they're a CAGRD and they're pumping groundwater and need to replenish, and this is one method to actually offset those costs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
So at the end of the day, the city will have saved at the end of this agreement $27,372.15 towards our annual CAP capital charges. Now, our subcontract, which we touched base on, our CAP subcontract is 10,742 acre feet. We're required to pay $15 per acre foot on the capital debt of the canal. Whether we take that water every year or not, we pay that debt. It's $161,130. So the El Mirage is going to pay that $15 per acre foot of what they're buying in our long-term storage credit account. So the city will realize a savings of $27,000 plus dollars. At the end of the day, I mentioned the city will increase its long-term storage credit account balance by 1,825.19 acre feet. With that, I will open up for discussion or any other questions you may have.
Joe?
Just real quick, it's my understanding, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, as time goes on, that CAGRD water is going to start getting very, very expensive because they're behind the eight ball, not behind, but they're behind schedule on how much they have to purchase to start, replenishing and putting in the ground. So as long as you're on CAGRD, those costs are going to start skyrocketing. So from my perspective, any plan that you can start moving us off of that into, to the other, I think is a good plan. For long term, we can save some money by doing that. So
I'd agree.
I appreciate with the plan.
Absolutely. And I think that's there was a study done. The Central Arizona Water Conservation District is the same as the CAGRD. It's the same board that runs both of those. And they did a study about 2 years ago looking at just the cost of water for their estimated replenishment. The numbers came out between $500 million and $1 billion for their replenishment obligation. So those costs are going to come on the back of the ratepayers that are going to be using that groundwater replenishment option. So I think the goal is down the short and long road, stay away from that water if we can. Absolutely. Renewable supplies are the goal, and cheaper.
Any other questions? Well, thank you very much. That was for your first free time before us and giving such an extensive presentation. That very good, and we appreciate it. And welcome aboard.
Thank
You're
you
now
very
official, huh?
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And obviously, this will be coming back to you on the October 22nd council meeting. So
Great.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right, the next item is Mayor and Council will receive an update on the Corrugat Wash Water Reclamation Facility Improvements projects. And we have Brad Richards, Project Manager, presenting.
Mayor, if I could just kick this off.
Yes, please.
have Jerry Postema also is going to add to our presentation.
All right, great.
And being a public works person, I'm kind of excited to introduce this. This is a work session that begins to explain a little bit about our Corrugat water reclamation facility improvements. And there's really two major components. Actually, there's three when it comes to council next week, and that's approving the participation agreement. Two, an agreement that the City Council in July 2011 approved with reference to Newland communities in the city of Goodyear for this particular plant. We all agreed that we would have Tata and Howard, a consulting firm, take a look at this plant, take a look at what it would need to upgrade the plant with reference to its capacity, and also making sure, and Mark referred to it as Class A plus effluent that we would need to send to Estrella. So what we did from the study dealt with what they called option B, and I don't want to steal too much of Brad's thunder, to develop a system that increased capacity, and also other things that were very important to the plant with reference to capital replacement. The plant's 24 years old. We have a lot of things to upkeep. The day-to-day operations of this plant are really becoming challenging because of that. And with that idea and having the ability to fold both of these projects into one contract, gain great efficiencies and great unit pricing from a contractor, we felt it was in the city's best interest to do that. So with that, I'd like to hand it off to Brad to begin explaining this to you, and then part of the operations, because they're so important, Jerry's going to kind of pitch in and help them.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Lord and council members, please be here tonight to go over this.
Be sure you put that microphone close to you, because we want the people to hear this, especially the people in Australia tonight. They're anxious to hear this. So.
Pleased to be here tonight to give you an overview on the project to date. I think Jack did an excellent introduction. We'll just add maybe some photographs, a little more detail to his overview tonight. We started this project back, well, a little over a year ago. Some of the project objectives came together with partnership with Newland communities. And one of the main project objective was to provide 800,000 gallons a day of filter capacity and provide adequate redundancy. And the reason for this is to meet some regulatory criteria. We also want to, of course, meet the original budget. The second one was to construct the consultant recommended improvements. And this is an important item. We need to make sure that we can do this within available funding.
We always like to hear that.
Yes. It'll be a sort of an important part of the presentation as we go through. We're also going to be taking advantage of the economy of scale. Because of the main focus with the filter, we feel we can add these other recommended improvements. That's a good advantage for the city. Also, the important part of this project, of course, is to get an other amendment to the APP that we currently own and upgrade the effluent quality from B+ to A+. As Jack had mentioned, the plant is a little aged, so we thought it might be helpful just to sort of give it a little context. The plant was originally constructed in 1988 by Amcor, and as you may know, that was an EMR private developer. The facility then was expanded in 1994 and 1998 by Sunchase, also at that time a private developer. And the city operated the plant, but we did not accept ownership until 2006. In addition to the site plan that we showed on the earlier slide, I thought it might be helpful to just get a context of some of the facilities and processes that we'll be talking about a little bit later. In the upper left-hand corner, we have an aeration and clarification basin. To the right, upper right-hand corner is the existing filter basin. lower left-hand corner is a sludge tank that we'll be talking about in some detail. And to the lower right-hand corner, there's a plant water system where we actually use the effluent for maintenance and operation of the plant. These are the three, I guess, major components of the presentation. We wanted to talk about the participation agreement, where we were and where we are, and also the amendment that's a requirement of that agreement. And we go through the construction contract, which will identify the actual physical items that we're looking at constructing, and also a change order, which will have the steel sludge tank. It's a little bit of a preview of what that relates to. And of course, lastly, but not least, is the fiscal impact statement. As Jack had mentioned, in June of 2011, the city entered into a participation agreement with Newland Communities. The basis for that agreement was the city consultant, Tate and Howard, which had completed a study in 2010. Among the items within that study was what's known as the option B, and that was the disc filter improvements. In addition, they also identified many critical processes that needed attention as well, and these are what we're referring to as our recommended facility improvements. The initial cost sharing based on the participation agreement, we had a $990,000 budget. $330,000 was funded by the city. Newland's cost share was $660,000. So in terms of the participation agreement, so why do we need an amendment? Moving forward, an amendment was required by the original participation agreement. The amendment was to allocate costs for the project, including the filters as well as these recommended improvements. And the only way to get there was to actually do several things simultaneously. One, we had to build or design the project to the point where the engineer could give us a good solid estimate. And from that point, we could talk to Newland and figure out which items were a city cost, which were a Newland cost, and which were a combination cost where both parties received the benefit. Once that was done, we negotiated with Newland and came up with the cost allocation or sharing, if you will. And then the final numbers that are in the amendment are based on the actual bid costs that we put out to bid. So also while that was going on, we were also talking to finance, identifying available funds, because we didn't want to bid a job that we didn't have funds for. So within the construction contract and the change order allowance, we have the option B, the disc filters. We have the recommended improvements I talked about.
Can I just ask a question? Tell me a little bit about the disc filters, because every time you mention the word filters to me, it says, "Ooh, got to replace them all the time." You know, so can you just enlighten me? Is that
3 slides away, Myra.
3 slides away? I should have known that. I did read this. Okay, go ahead.
Jerry's going to help out with the recommended improvements and go through the different
thank you.
processes. And the steel sludge tank improvements is where we're getting into this change order allowance discussion now. So Jerry's also going to be covering that topic as well. So here we are in our option B improvements. This is the existing system that we have out there today. The picture on the left gives you sort of an overview of the basin, what it looks like. If you look on the right, underneath traveling bridge, basically what we're going to be doing is taking out the existing filtration media, as well as doing some structural changes to the basin. We'll also be taking out this traveling bridge that runs across the top of the filter that allows it to backwash and so on. So what is the disc filter?
Okay, here we go.
Basically, what you see is it's woven polyester.
What is polyester?
There's actually discs, and it sits on a center drum. And it rotates as spray nozzles spray the filtered part out of the flow, and then it gets out through what, if you look at it says
Okay,
backwash
I
arrow
guess I
there.
still have the same question, because filters are filters. Do those have to be, is there a lining that has to be replaced in that, or are those sustainable, or or am I thinking in the wrong direction?
Like a pool filter.
You know, I'm thinking like a pool, I'm just thinking like
right.
filters, I'm just curious.
The anticipated or the design life on these is somewhere between 5 and 10 years, and that's going to depend on what
Okay,
you're going
5
to
and
hit.
10, all right.
Basically, what they are, they're like pie slices or pizza slices, if you will, and they just clamp into place. There's about 10 to each circular disc.
Okay.
So
So then
that's
we
how.
obviously budget for that, for those as they have a life to them, so, okay.
Right, that'd be part of the O&M.
That's right, you don't have to go any further, that answered all my questions.
Oh, I have a question on that.
Oh, did you?
but
Okay.
I'm getting all into this filter discussion. So if it's a pizza, if we take out one slice, do you have to replace the whole pie, or can you just replace the slices if the slices go bad?
Well, you can do that. You replace the slice, if you will, the piece.
Part, yeah.
You can also put in a blank, but yeah, they're designed to, if you had a tear in one of them, for say, you can easily just take the whole piece out as the one slice.
So this whole thing doesn't have to be replaced every 5 or?
No.
Some parts may last 5.
So it can
some
be
may-
repaired,
No.
okay.
Just
so-
curious.
Yeah, I am too,
That question?
yes.
So if you're
Molly?
going to put a disc filter in, is it going to go where the existing sand filter was, or is it going to go where the traveling bridge was?
It's going to, well, the traveling
So-
bridge is more of a close-up of the entire basin.
Right, but is the filter going to go right in here?
We're actually, because of the way that these are built and the efficiency of the equipment, we're going to put 2 of them into the one basin. So basically what that'll do in terms of filtration with expandability within this unit, it'll cover the filtration requirements at the plant up to 2030, which is basically the build-out of the facility.
Sherry?
2030 long enough?
Excuse me, Crown.
I'm sorry.
Yes, that'll
That
cover
doesn't
the
seem
build
like
out
too
of the
long, really, when you
Corrugat
stop
basin.
and think about it. 2030 is going to be here before we know it.
That's based on the study that was done, and so it's 2 years old. So of course the trending may have changed, but
Mayor, council member, that's really for build out, that's for demand. So the idea is the geographic area that's supposed to facilitate will take build out,
Okay.
full
At
development.
2030.
That's the
Behold.
projected assumption.
Okay, good. Great.
Jerry?
Because it sounds like you're going to be doubling the capacity, which I think is a very good thing. Is this going to increase, I have a 2-part question, the noise or anything? Because our house is really close to there. And just so people in the neighborhood don't get upset not knowing what's going on, are we going to put something in the Estrella magazines up there so that they know this is a good thing that's coming their way? It's not going to increase, it's not making it worse, because I'm afraid when people start seeing work over there that they may jump to the wrong conclusion.
I think it's a good idea. I think we just need to give them the information so there isn't misinformation out there, so.
the just to clarify a couple of points, that we're not doubling anything. The second filter is basically a redundant requirement by the county.
Okay.
At no extra noise, as you can see in the upper right-hand corner of that slide, there's a cover over the top of them. They literally sit below the grade, and they'll be covered. And in terms of notifying the community as part of the participation agreement, Newland and the city are going to be doing a community outreach and discussion presentation.
Good.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you.
Just one quick follow-up
Sorry.
question. You'd be replacing these. How does that impact the day-to-day operations?
well, there's a 2-week window that the engineers come up with in terms of being able to go in, gut the existing filter, and make the changes. And then these come on a skid, as you can see, kind of in that upper right.
Right.
It's basically a pre-assembled unit, so you're going to lower it into the basin. It's a critical part of the project. We were able to continue operation of the facility during that time.
Okay.
So and this is a system that's done with these sand filters being replaced with this particular type of equipment quite frequently, quite regularly.
Okay, so day-to-day operations won't be impacted there at the plant. Okay.
That no one has any other questions, I'd like to turn it over to Jerry and
Good evening. I'd like to go over the recommended improvements.
I don't have that, I guess.
Try not to change it again. They're classified into two categories. One is capital replacement, and the second one is treatment processes for providing A+ effluent. The two important critical parts of the effluent flow monitoring are we're going to be creating A+ effluent for irrigation to the community in Newland, in Australia, excuse me. The other part is when we cannot produce A+ effluent, or if they cannot take it for irrigation purposes, we still must discharge to the wash. So by regulatory requirements, we have to monitor and know exactly what we've delivered to what area, and then we have to report that. So we are replacing one meter and getting a new meter. On the influent flow meter, same thing. There's currently an existing meter, which was installed 24 years ago. The meter was installed upstream of the backwash water, so when the filters do a normal backwash, it was going through the filter again, or through the meter again, excuse me. So basically we're double counting the water. That was not efficient, and it wasn't good for when we did our reporting. So what we did is we installed a temporary meter outside the plant, but unfortunately it has to be manually read every week and downloaded into a computer. This will replace that.
Great.
Chlorine contact basin. This is a very important part of the disinfection product or process in order to get the A+ effluent product. What happens is after the filtration system, after it goes through the disc filter, we then do a chlorination. The current system, basically we go with the operators have to go with what the daily average flow is, and then just set the chlorinators to deliver that amount of chlorine to hope they kill everything. We don't treat to an A+ effluent, we treat to a B+, so that's okay. As we move to an A+, we have to improve that efficiency, so we're recommending that a flow monitor device be installed. And what will happen is when the flows increase, it will increase the dose of chlorine, and as the flows decrease, it will decrease the amount of chlorine that's being added. The chlorine contact basin then does the disinfection part. It has a certain amount of contact time with bacteria to make sure everything's killed. We have the sludge pumps. You can look at the picture. They're 24 years old as well and have exceeded their useful life. The valve automation control, that's actually for diverting solids to the digester tank. What happens is manually we have to have somebody go in. You see those valves that are red above ground. They have to physically operate those to divert the solids. So by putting in the automation, it takes away the manual part of it, and it makes it more efficient.
So that means the person that had to do that stayed on site during that? I mean, was it a rotating time that they, you said manual, somebody was up there, so is that?
Yeah, well, what they had to do is they would look at the process. So for example, they would go into where the aeration basin was, and they would take a look at the bugs, as we refer to them. If they were healthy, they didn't have to worry about anything. If they were not healthy, needed some more food, the solids, they would have to add some more solids to the process. So that's where the manual part came in. The housekeeping concrete pad, whenever we do any kind of a change to the valves or the pumps or motors, switch them out, we have to capture all that waste. We're not allowed to let it go on the ground. So right now we have to put down tarps or other mechanisms. So right now this pad would actually create that containment area. And on top of that, it would give a more solid base so those pumps and motors you see in the picture do not have undue wear and tear.
It's amazing, isn't it?
The plant water system, which Brad talked about briefly, that was an internal system. It takes the effluent, again, that was installed in 1988, and it recirculates the water internally for cooling, for maintenance, just basically the internal process. And that is, again, outside its useful life. The aeration system is a coarse bubble, which basically means that you have, well, if you look in the upper right-hand corner of the slide, you see the picture of what appears to be, from a meteorologist perspective, two hurricanes. That's basically just
It's a good way to describe it.
basically you're just dumping all this air, and it's creating turbulence, which is not a very efficient or effective way to go. What we're proposing or recommending is that we go with a fine air diffusion, and it's monitored, and it allows the appropriate amount of air to be entered into the system without creating this type of turbulence. Then we have the steel sludge digester tank, and in part of this contract, we have $17,000 for an analysis. We couldn't empty it and actually do a full evaluation, so the contractor will divert the flow around it, and what they will do is hire a structural engineer. They will go inside, do an analysis, provide the results to staff. We'll take a look at it, then we're looking for a contingency not to exceed $100,000 to do any repair or replacement needed of the tank.
I'm sorry, Jerry, for being so immature and giggling through some of your discussion. I don't deal with this on a daily basis.
Last time we talked trash, now.
Yes, I know.
Anyways,
Wait,
moving on.
hang on. I actually have a serious
Bill, I
question.
didn't see you ask a question.
No, that's all right. So, are we going to replace the steel tank?
You're right.
I thought I heard we were, and then at the very end there, I heard analysis.
Yeah, in the bid contract, it was for an analysis, so we don't know what the interior looks like. We don't know if it needs a simple repair or needs total replacement.
So it could be just the rust that you're talking about, the big tank that we saw.
Yeah, if you
It
can go-
could be
can you
just
go
the
one more?
rust showing on the outside, but the internal part of it is acceptable. Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay.
I'm looking at the lower left picture, the lower right picture. Those look like those have actually, which I would expect in a steel tank to go through, eat through.
Yes, and that's the only part that we can see. Everything else is basically full of sludge. So in order to do a full evaluation of the entire structure, it has to be pumped out, and then somebody enter it and then analyze it, do a report.
Okay. Because I'm just, knowing what I know about steel tanks, they don't last. These are 24 years old. I can't imagine that the inside looks much different than the outside does.
And if I could, the $100,000 is the maximum price, and that's full replacement. So we'll
Okay.
take a good look at it for the structural engineer. But that's the maximum we'll pay, and it would be full replacement.
Okay, so that's included in that, that's where I was going.
Exactly.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Interesting. I'm sorry, one quick question. Okay, so this is just making me think a little bit. Seeing that hole on the previous slide, if in fact there is a hole like that, or some even small cracks way deep down underground, and it's actually leaking into, can it be leaking into the ground? Could it be, I mean, I have no idea. Could it be small amounts, seepage? I don't know.
It's actually constructed into a mountain, so it's solid rock.
Oh, okay.
That's part of the challenge with this whole process. Whatever leakage does occur may be a little bit of liquids, and I really don't know what that would be like till we actually see the tank.
I see. I mean, so obviously it's not like it's some Superfund site underneath there. This is
absolutely not.
Okay. Thank you.
So the improvements for the A+ effluent, there's a chlorine chemical feed automation. This is after the chlorine contact basin. What we like to do is have a chlorine residual as the effluent goes out into the system. That way it contains a little bit of disinfection potential. But if we go to the wash, we have to completely dechlorinate. So we have to shut the chlorination system off and then dechlorinate any chlorine residual that's remaining. So that's what this automation system's for. The upgrade of the instrumentation system, I guess the best analysis I have for that is if you have a 1988 computer with 1988 software trying to talk to 2012 computers and 2012 software, it doesn't work too good. So along with this, we have to make some upgrades which are going to be related to the software and also to the hardware. And when I say hardware, I'm talking about what's called the programmable logic control. It's basically like a computer which resides in your household appliances, your refrigerators, your microwaves, the little microprocessors. That's really what we're talking about, not computers like we have on our desks. The Stamford baffles are really what's being installed by the gentleman in the white t-shirt and the jeans, and then the completed around the basin in the left corner of the slide. And what that does is in the aeration system and in the clarifier, whenever you have an upset, like let's say that for example, the temperature changes and the liquids and the solids tend to exchange places, so the solids tend to rise and you really want them to sink, or you have extremely high flows for some reason. What these do is they actually push those solids back down, make it more efficient, reduce the amount of the backwash that needs to be done at the filters. So it's a really good thing, and as a matter of fact, I believe it was Newland who came up with the recommendation, their engineer, and the city staff agreed with it wholeheartedly.
I'm sorry.
Yes, Joanne.
Thank you. So I wasn't here back in 2006, or as a council person to have seen what was going on here. Now we're here 6 years later, and we're having to take care of a bunch of upkeep because of just pure age. I understand that, and very old computer systems, as you're saying, things like that. Now I don't know what occurred 6 years ago. If this was, did we purchase this? Was just given to us by Newland? Was this smart on the city's part to have taken that over? Was this required of us to take this over? Can you give me a little bit of history of that?
City manager, do you want to address that, or
you can get back to me on that if that's a
got it.
long answer. I mean, I'm just curious about all this.
Mayor and Councilmember Osborne, I do not have the history as far as how that transitioned over. We can certainly go back and look at what the COAC or the staff report was back then. I was not personally involved. I'm not sure if anyone else here was, so don't have that
That's
readily
fine.
available.
I would be interested in hearing about that.
We'd be happy to do the research because I don't know who was around in 2006.
I was around.
Yeah. I was around.
I was around. I was around. That's why I pushed it off on someone else.
My recollection, and I think it'd probably be best to go back to the staff reports. She's going to tell me to put my mic on, not you, Lane.
Yeah. Yes.
There was an agreement that the plant was constructed. We had the opportunity to inspect and then accept, and I think we accepted 3 or 4 years ago. Is that right?
The actual acceptance by the city was 2006.
Oh, 6, okay. So yeah, it was, and the agreement predated that by a number of years, because I know we've been through a process before we finally accepted the plan. But we can dig that up and get it to you. It might
We
be
can
best.
we can get the details on it, but there was conversation on it.
It took quite a while to get
It
to
took
plant
it
acceptance.
took quite a while. Yeah. So. Yes, Wally.
In the slides, one of the slides talks about the participating agreement from 2011, and it says that the cost sharing of what the share is. But then, I don't know what slide I have up now.
Have we gotten there yet, or are we
Yeah.
coming up to that?
I think the next slide is going to
Yeah,
break
let's
out all the
wait.
costs.
Can we wait?
Well, is
Wally?
that in addition to this other?
There's 2 components to this contract. One envelops the participation agreement that shows the 660-330 split.
And that's what we agreed to in June.
Yes. That's what we agreed to in June.
Yeah.
Knowing that we needed, that was an engineer's estimate.
Okay.
Knowing we needed to fine tune that when we got a bid contract. And then the other larger portion is the capital replacement part that we needed to do for our plant that we run and operate.
Okay.
Okay.
Then I'll save my question to you the next slide.
Thank you, Wally.
Because this really is just
Turn over to Brett.
huge. It's like the national debt. It has to be done. Okay. Next slide.
This is the one.
This is the one.
This is the fiscal impact. As we can see, the total project cost, the design and the construction, as it's bid, is $1.6 million. And we've broken that out in a couple of different ways. On the left, underneath where it says total design cost, okay, that's the contract for the city consultant, Tate and Howard, for design, procurement, bidding, and construction management services. The total construction cost would be $1.443 million. Another way to break out the $1.6 million number. The city cost as bid today is $950,810. That includes all design, all construction services, and our share of the construction, which includes the disc filters that we discussed, as well as the recommended improvements that Jerry went through. Newland's cost for this project includes other items as well as some shared. It's $694,923. So we wanted to break out the total project cost so you can see where the numbers are in terms of the city allocation. So out of the $950,810, we're responsible for $80,942 in terms of that $202,000 engineer contract. The construction contract for the city cost is $769,868. And the steel tank change order allowance that we discussed is a $100,000 maximum, again, depending on the results of the analysis. It could be zero. Could
So
be.
if the tank is in, once you get in there, and it is in, but
It can't be zero.
I can't imagine zero.
There's something has.
I can't imagine looking at it from the outside at zero.
Zero is in we don't do anything.
There's some bond needed.
There is some cost there, I'm sure.
So I mean, you saw the picture of the tank, so
Yeah.
it's critical. It's a critical element of the project. So again, as we talked about in terms of funding and how do we get here to this larger number. The original participation agreement, as we showed, allocated $330,000, and that covered the construction and design of the disc filters and the design of these recommended improvements. Again, the design of the recommended improvements was required so that we can get a handle on exactly how many dollars we're talking about before we could move forward with the amendment and the other items. So the recommended capital replacement and process improvements, the city cost for those items would be $620,810. So as you can see, we've got that ends up with our $950,000 number. If I'm sorry, I skipped over an item there. I'd like to back up. The funding source for the initial $330,000, as you can see, was from the existing fund balance in the wastewater operations fund. When we met with finance some months ago, I think our first real formal sit-down was early this year. Bond money from the previous wastewater reclamation facility project savings was identified, and so the $620,810 was available, and that gave us enough confidence to move forward with being able to bid the project with these recommended improvements and take advantage of that opportunity to address these other items at the plant.
Any questions on this so far? Yes, okay.
Yes, please.
Vice Mayor, go ahead.
Thank you. Okay, I just so I understand all this. The bond money from previous wastewater facility savings, okay, I look at this two ways. Good that we had bond money already available to cover this project, correct? But I sit there wondering, how long has that money been sitting there we've been in debt for or paying interest on or just as debt? I mean, how long does that sit there from I don't know, a previous I mean, how long has that been there? I'm glad it's there to take care of this project today, but does this happen a lot? Is there leftover? I'm not $620,000 that was just sitting there for no reason, but for future.
Vice Mayor, the funding in this particular one were bonds that were sold, I believe, in 2010. Is for the 157th Avenue plant expansion.
So it's not that old then?
No,
Okay.
and you'll recall also at a similar time frame, we did a project with the Water Infrastructure Financing Authority that was a 2% interest rate, and we shifted some of the costs into that project that we had funded out of this project. The target at that time was the next expansion of the wastewater treatment plant would be where that money would go. However, the strategy on that is that the development impact fees will be sufficient to fund that next expansion, so that this money can be used here, and we won't have to re-borrow a second time.
Okay, so good answer then. Okay. So all in all, this is about replacement. You've shown that this is about replacement. But is there also increased capacity, or is it? I mean, back to the confusion. Was this doubling? And if that's the case, is that why Newland is? I mean, obviously, with increased capacity, it's so that there's more homes to be built, correct? So help me. I just want to make sure that I'm understanding all of that.
I'm going to give you my best answer, and I might need some help from Brad. But I think initially, and I wasn't here, of course, in 2011, but I think initially, by design, the plant I had some expectations that I don't think it met. It was a lot of times they're designed, there's a certain capacity, and then through operations, there's just a different throughput. And I don't think that the county and the state thought that this plant would provide as much production as it was supposed to. And therefore, we needed to go back and negotiate with Newland Communities to be sure that it had the capacity to continue to allow for growth. And that was what brought on the agreement back in July 2011 that also included some dollars that we would both put in to ensure that we had A+ effluent, so that would give us the water quality. So I think that's why we came to that agreement back in July 2011, and why we continue to work and partner with them to make sure that we've got the plant that we need to have for the next few years until it needs to be expanded again. The filtration system that we talked about, the disc filters, there is a component to that is oversized. It doesn't include the filters, but it includes the cylindrical part so that it can be expanded in the future with more membrane. And that makes just a lot of sense to do right now rather than to spend a lot more money later in doing that.
Okay, so we have replacements, we're preparing for growth, and growth is paying for itself. Newland's paying for it. Okay,
Exactly.
thank you.
Now, I'll ask my question back. Okay, so just so that I understand this. So the participating agreement of $990,000 was what we thought it would cost. And now it's going to cost $1,645, whatever that is? Or is this in addition to?
Yeah, the original agreement that just dealt with Brad called option B,
Right.
was estimated to be around $990,000.
Okay.
And give or take, that's what it is. But taking the opportunity to get these upgrades and capital replacements, we put another $620,000 worth of improvements into that contract. And therefore, that's why the contract reflects $1.4 million. A portion of that we may not spend. That's part of the $100,000
Sure.
change order.
Well, thank you. Now I understand it. And I know it's very important that we get water up in Estrella because that's where they want to build. And I'm really glad that we're preparing for them to be able to build. And I appreciate Newland paying part of the cost of it as well. He is, right?
Talking to myself.
Yeah, but he is paying part of the cost. Newland.
You see it right
Yes,
in the-
right, yes, and I think that's wonderful that they're doing that too, but this is something we need to do, and thank you for explaining it so now we can understand better.
I think as
Thank
a
you.
city, we've been concerned about this for some time. So it wasn't that the city wasn't aware of it, and it wasn't where the Newland wasn't aware of it. It took time getting both parties together and negotiating it and coming up with a fair agreement. Because like you say, there's different people at the table from the original agreement to now. So, Bill?
Okay, I'm going to make you walk through this again because it's not clear to me. The original, a year ago, participation agreement for 990 was to do the B option.
Yes.
We've added to that capital improvement parts to this contract.
Correct.
Correct? Okay. There are a lot of numbers on this slide, and none of it really says that. So I'm struggling with this. And I heard you say, Jack, that the total price for this project is 1.4, but we're showing 1.645.
Right.
So I can see where the math is on the slide, but is the total cost of this 1.645 or is it 1.443?
The total cost of the total project that the engineers need to include with reference to design is $1,645,733. What I'm referring to is the cost of the contract that you're going to see next week is $1,443,429 over on the left side.
Okay. So we've already, at some point in time, a council has already approved the design cost of the 202-304.
That's correct.
Okay. So what we see in a couple of weeks is going to be $1,443,000.
That's correct.
And that's for everything. How much of this is Newland going to write a check for?
I'm not sure. I think they have made some prepayments already, but I would tell you that their total commitment is $694,923.
It's a little more than half of it.
That's their total commitment for the total $1,645,733.
All right. Clear. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
No other questions? Thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you.
Is there more? Is that it? I have next, I see next steps and stuff.
Oh, wait. Is there more?
There's,
There is more. I thought
there
there
is
was.
more.
No, is it?
My apologies.
Yeah, this mirror is just letting you know that a week from today, that you will see on the formal agenda the amendment to the participation, the contract, and the change order that's part of the contract. That's all.
Any questions on that part of what's coming up? Next steps. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions later. So we're finished with the presentations. So I'm sure council will keep the current events till Monday. That's fine. And so I'll turn it over to city manager at this point.
Yes, Mayor, members of the council, just a couple of follow-up items as a result of the work session tonight. One was just to make sure that you know that there is an outreach, community outreach associated with this plant expansion. So stay tuned. We will provide you a schedule of those activities as well as other information, means of getting that out. The second is, and I am going to do this via yellow paper, but we'll give you a background as far as the staff report going back to 2006 on the acquisition of this sewer treatment facility. So that will include the staff report as well as any other updated information. But we'll put that to you via yellow paper. You'll have that before the next council meeting. Shoot for the latter part of the week.
I have a question on that. Was that Newland back then?
No, it was not.
And that's I think that's I wanted to bring that up
It
earlier,
was
and I didn't.
Sun MP.
Sun MP, so we're dealing with different entities now.
Yeah.
So it was, I think, clarification of what they understood when they purchased the property and the clarification of what we thought. And so there was a lot of unsaid, complicated part to this that staff had to research. And so I think, is that kind of the direction that
Mayor, that's absolutely on target. There were a lot of agreements that were done over the last 20 plus years, and some of them tied us to when we would take over the plant. So there's a lot of history on this and a lot of agreements, but it will show that.
You didn't know that this was just, we started with a clean slate back then and we developed this whole thing. We didn't. We picked up on what we found out was said and done, and what we worked on that, and worked it from the contract from that on. And so I have to congratulate staff, and I appreciate Newland coming to the table. It's taken a long time for this agreement. It's been back and forth, and it's been complicated. And if it didn't get solved, I think they would have had trouble up there in the community with a faulty system. And we needed to get on with this. And so this is extremely important for all the citizens living up there. So it's our duty as a city to solve this and get on with it so that we don't have any repercussions.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, with that, first of all, I never gave you a chance to talk about our dear Nate, who's not here tonight. If you want to make any comments before we go, I apologize for sort of breaking down, but he was a great guy, and the seat will be empty until we, go through the process. And Monday night we will present that to the public and how we're handling this. Okay, so just so the public knows that we will be replacing that seat, and there is a process, and we will announce that on Monday night. Okay. Anything? Okay. We're going to just adjourn this meeting.